So today we're going to go over some basic troubleshooting skills just to help you identify if there's a potential issue or not, and how to get through that part of the whole process a lot faster. Offline testing and usage, how to test your offline ticket entry, as well as some tidbits on when you're going to use it, when not to use it, that type of thing. RDP deployment, so how to walk through that step, whether you're hosted or manage your own environment with a server on site, and end of year calendar change, so which comes up every year. So we've wanted to touch base on that as well today. We're going to leave plenty of time at the end for some questions or any thoughts, or anybody just want to talk through some specific areas. I'm here today, of course, but I also have Dustin Morse in the room as a technical resource. He's going to help me answer some questions at the end, just since I'm not the one who does the installs, but I certainly am able to share the information. Great, so diving right into it here, first and foremost, just some basic troubleshooting skills for your system. So we've put together some simple steps to follow just to help you and maybe your cashiers identify certain things if they have the ability to do that. So if your computer or back office computer or register is not working for whatever reason, obviously there could be, multiple things that could possibly be wrong. But simple steps like checking the cable connections, not only to the terminal, but to your peripherals as well. So checking the cash drawer. Over time in a retail environment, things tend to get bumped and moved around. Cables do go bad. So identifying that and just cross-checking and making sure everything's where it needs to be at the right place is always a great first step. Is your remote desktop still connected? For those of you who do connect via RDP session, in online mode specifically, so just making sure you're not in offline, but is your RDP still connected, or did that disconnect is always another great step to follow if your business is using that connection method. Is your internet connection working? That tends to happen at times, as we've seen in the industry. So always verifying that you do have a stable internet connection that would allow you to continue to manage your business, and specifically in online mode, just because you could always go into offline mode. However, we like to see and know from a support standpoint if you're in online or offline. Has the computer rebooted or been rebooted recently? So if you recently rebooted it, or if it hasn't been in a while, those are also great steps and methods to look at before you submit a support ticket. And don't forget to write down or take a snapshot of any of your error messages if you're getting one. I know there's one of the greatest tools that I use in Windows quite a bit is the snippet tool, to be able to quickly snap a picture or take a cutout of what's going on, to be able to send and attach. There is a way to attach those images into a support ticket so that our support technicians can get that faster or get that information faster. So in case you move on from that screen and you lose the error message, we're not trying to replicate it and slowing down the process of getting your issues resolved. So don't forget that. And if any of you need any help with those steps, or just understanding how to create a ticket, maybe attaching an image, certainly just let myself or Ariel know. Thank you for entering in those questions, George. I will get to those after we get through the presentation today. So moving on, if none of those steps work or have actually rectified the issue you're experiencing, at any time, please call, email, or enter a request on the RCS portal. I know a lot of you are probably very familiar with the system and how that works. You can always send an email into support@retailcontrolsystems.com. And before moving on, I want to make sure that you guys are entering in all of the info as possible. So just making sure that we have a point of contact with the correct contact information when requesting support, as well as you don't have to create a story, but essentially giving us the information we need to quickly understand what might be going on. Obviously, we may need to call to follow up and get additional information, but anything additional that you can add to that request definitely helps us steer in the right direction. And it also helps us identify which support technician, depending on the issue, is the best to fit this with. So anything additional is always a help to us. especially those pictures of those error messages or what's happening in the time that it's happening. And use your cell phones too. If you're going to take a snap image and email it in, we can definitely accommodate that. So store location is always key. Point of contact, as I mentioned. Number of registered connected, but to add to that, simply, is it happening on one register or is it happening at all registers? That's always important to identify because that could also relate to an additional maybe network structure issue that we need to look at. So really identifying where it's happening in your store. It may be happening just at the cash register, or it might just be happening in the back of the house, so in the warehouse or something, so we need to identify that. Are you in online or offline mode at the time it's happening? So if you're getting an error message in offline mode, make sure you specify that so we can, again, fit the right specifications around that. Contact information, again, just making sure we have the point of contact, but also phone number, email, or the best method of contact to get in touch with you. So our technicians have that right up front. Like I said, quick overview of the issue. Yeah, it may be hardware or software related. That's always a nice tidbit to add in there. I'm thinking it's software because of this, or I'm thinking it's hardware because of this instance. And again, just to reiterate, attaching those error messages if possible. Sometimes they're not always there when we get into your environment to look at that. So if we at least have a picture, then it knows where to send us. Great. So moving away from the troubleshooting piece of things, we're going to dive into some offline functionality. So specifically, I'd like to start with testing your offline stations. So this should be a pretty constant process for you guys. So just if you have offline ticket as an option, or if you're looking to implement offline, meaning purchase the option in your Counterpoint package, it's extremely important to make sure you're testing that functionality. So it should be followed as an end-of-day process on any day that offline ticket entry was in use or any register for a specific store. The procedures that we have outlined here, I'm also going to follow up. I have some great simple brochure documentation that will go out after end of today into tomorrow probably. So you'll have all these steps too, so don't stress about reading them on my presentation right now. I will follow up and make sure you have all of them. So important, step one, after the last customer is serviced out of all instances of Counterpoint, live or offline, on all of the registers in the store, rebooting each register, opening offline tickets, so OTE stands for offline ticket entry, and run an edit list. Note the last offline ticket number listed for each offline station drawer. Open live Counterpoint, so your live instance of Counterpoint, and count your drawers. Excuse me, exit live Counterpoint. Wait a few minutes, recommended 15 minutes, and run an edit list for all drawers in live Counterpoint. Compare the offline ticket and live edit lists and verify that the last offline ticket is listed for each offline drawer. If the last offline ticket is listed for all offline drawers, continue your end of day process as normal, as you normally process that. If the last offline ticket is not listed, then you'd move on to step two, which is rebooting the registers, waiting approximately 15 minutes, opening your live version of Counterpoint, and rerun that edit list comparing as above in the step one. If the last offline ticket is still not listed, please call us so we can help with that. So some questions that some of you might, or these are some questions that we continuously get, so we thought it'd be important to touch on. How do I test to make sure my devices are working in offline ticket entry? So the easiest way to do that is to open your touch screen, which is in Counterpoint, as all of you use that every day, in point of sale, and just run a small cash transaction and verify that the pull display, if you're using one, or display is working. Receipt printers are printing and your cash drawers are popping. Very important. Be sure to record the ticket number, because you'll only be able to void this ticket once your tickets have been automatically transferred to the main server, whether you're in a hosted environment or have a local server. Another one, so what are the major differences in daily procedures when using offline ticket or versus being in live mode? So online mode is what we like to call it. Offline has some of the following capabilities. So activation of new drawers and drawer session continuation. Touchscreen point of sale you'll have use of. You'll just be able to sell your items and perform returns. There's some other items within touchscreen that you won't be able to do in offline mode, so important to know that. End of day procedures, so count your current drawers and voiding completed tickets, drawer reconciliation, posting, and the running of reports are in live Counterpoint only. So that's an important piece right there. Just keep that in mind when you're in offline, that you're not going to have some functionality. How do I know if my completed tickets have moved from offline to my live database? So making sure things are moving and syncing the way they're supposed to once you come out of that offline mode. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure that tickets have moved is to run a ticket edit list from inside Counterpoint while you're in online with a cutoff date of that day. So if some of you need some help or guidance around that part of it, we can certainly dive in deeper there, but thought it'd be important to kind of go over some of these steps. And moving into the usage side, so when is it a good time to use offline ticket? Some of you I know we do have some customers that are in offline all the time, but basically your offline ticket should be used when any given register is experiencing problems with the live version of Counterpoint. This could happen for several different reasons. You operate in an always offline environment. Two, your internet provider could be experiencing an outage that prevents you from connecting to the server. I think we've seen that happen a couple times this year. Obviously, that tends to be a bigger upset, so we try to identify that and get that communication out to you guys, but that's a really good example because it does happen. You have a technical problem with your local network, server, or software that causes your register to freeze, lock up, or perform very slowly during transactions. There could be other underlining issues that could potentially be causing other things not to communicate properly. So that'd be a good time. You cannot process credit cards for any reason. Offline ticket will allow you to process credit cards using a backup modem if that option, is configured. How to open offline ticket. So completely log out of your live version of Counterpoint, so you need to log out. Open offline ticket using one of the following. Double click on the icon because you'll have an offline specific icon on your desktop that will be labeled NCR Counterpoint or NCR Offline. And then log in, double click there and log in as you normally would into Counterpoint. None of that's going to look any different. Navigate to your start menu, programs, NCR Counterpoint, Counterpoint point of sale, and log in as you normally would into your touchscreen method. And then to simply log out of offline ticket, it's important that you're exiting out of touchscreen. So by clicking the exit button and logging out, not just completely closing your session or trying to back out in any other method. So it's important to make sure you're clicking that exit. Great, I'm sure that has stemmed quite a few questions. So again, what I'm going to do is move through the rest of the presentation, what we have today, and then we'll certainly be able to address all of your questions, thoughts, concerns, anything we need to go over. So setting up an RDP, so remote desktop session. Setting up the RDP to your terminal server. So selecting start on your main menu. Run and type, you're looking for that executable. Again, I'm going to follow up with this documentation so you don't necessarily have to worry about jotting things down right now. Or you can go to start remote desktop connection and double click. I tried to get some decent images in here, so I apologize if some of them are fairly cloudy, but some of you may have experience with this already, but again, I will follow up with the documentation. So from there, you're going to expand your options button, which is usually right on the lower left-hand side there. Enter the IP of the so right here is where it's really going to depend on if you're hosted, if you're in a hosted environment, or if you maintain your own environment. You may have this information available, and you may need to rely on RCS to help you with one portion of this setup, so the access point to the data center. But enter the IP of the terminal server and domain username, and make sure that you select the allow me to save the credentials, which is on the display tab. Change the color to a high color 16-bit for performance. And Justin may be able to have more information around that, because I am definitely not the IT specialist. But as well, uncheck the display to connection bar when in use of the full screen, and select the local resources tab. My pictures came out fairly okay anyway. Change the keyboard combinations to on this computer. Select the printer options if you would like to redirect the printers and clipboard. If you would like to be able to copy and paste from your local machine into Counterpoint. And then from there, you would select the settings under remote audio. Verify that you do not record, that the do not record option is selected. Select OK. And then from there, you would move to, select the more button. Select the ports, and if you need the local drives, or if you are in need, your local drives or are saving documents that are needed for other programs, select OK, and select the Experience tab. Deselect all options for performance except font smoothing. Uncheck the Reconnect if connection is dropped. Recommended for back office, however, point of sale would be a business decision. I'm sure some of you have questions here, so bear with me. Go back to the General tab and Save As under Connection Settings. Important step there. Save to the C bin and name it Counterpoint SQL. Now select Connect, and you will be prompted for the password, and the credentials will finally be saved for this connection for further use.
I can jump in here as far as the reconnect if the connection is dropped, business decision comment there. So what happens is if there is a internet disturbance and you have this reconnect if connection is dropped selected, the remote desktop connection to the remote terminal server will reconnect. Now with certain versions of Counterpoints up until 8.5.4, what you're going to experience is all your devices stop working. The reason being is because you're in a new session. So our best practice is to have that. If you drop a connection, it'll log you off the terminal server, so you're back at a desktop knowing that you just need to log back in and everything will work when you have that first customer experience. What happens is if you reconnect, there's a kind of an odd customer experience that you guys probably see is, oh, my devices aren't working, I can't print your receipt, my cash is not popping, hold on a second, let me get you over here. So with that selected, you normally would just start a new session of Counterpoint. Now, obviously, it's a business decision, because if you drop a session while you're currently in a ticket, that ticket will be lost, and you have to re-enter that ticket. As well as the back office, we normally do it for the back office. Again, depending on the usage of the back office, some are more back office heavy than others. That's really why we go through that reconnect if connection is dropped conversation.
Great, thanks, Dustin. All right, moving on to changing your calendar at year end. So like I said, comes up every year, so I thought it'd be important to touch base on this. Any of you need any help or additional guidance, we're certainly here for that, so let us know. But you can start by going to Setup System Company within Counterpoint. Do a lookup on the current calendar, which should specify for this year. Do not just type in the current year. If the current year is listed, then select that year. Then you would click OK and save the change in company screen. So just making sure you're hitting that save. Now, if the calendar is not listed, if you're looking in there and you don't see the calendar listed, go ahead and you can do an F2 function, or just add the button, fill in the current year info as shown. So my example shows 2012, but it should be for 2017. Or you can just type in 2018 for the next calendar year. as it will not be available in a lookup as shown. Then you would click the Set Default Dates button. Fill in the ending date for the first week of the year. For most companies, this will be on Sunday, of course. This is only used for reporting periods. You can leave the use week as is, and then click OK. This will fill in the remaining dates. Save the new calendar year and save in the company screen. Again, don't forget to hit that save button. To make things easier next year, you might want to go into System Setup Calendars and build other future years to make your new January a lot easier for you year to date moving on. Great, and I know we've got some questions, and that's what we had prepared for today. So I'd like to just, what I'm going to do is I have to unmute all of you. So bear with me here. Great. Okay, George, I see your question on here first. So is there a fee for offline mode? Offline ticket entry is it's $190 per however many Counterpoint licenses you own. So if you own 10 licenses, to add the option, it's 190 times 10. And then the option would just need to be loaded onto your stations that are connecting. What time, and Kim, you had a question, what if you are down for days at a time?
So as far as that goes, you can run in offline mode for an extended period of time. What that does is it saves all of those tickets. Go ahead and connect to your server. You can manually sync all of those tickets up to the server. So offline mode is
yeah.
Great. Was that all you had for that? Justin?
Yeah. So like I said, I know there's some noise. As far as offline goes, you are able to run an offline for days at a time, not connected to a server, and all of those tickets are stored locally. And once you're connected to a server, you can manually sync those. You can really copy and paste those files into the server, and those will sync up, and you'll be able to process those as normal. One thing I do want to note is with the offline mode, and if you're in Secure Pay, we're processing credit cards through Secure Pay, you will need a source of internet connection to process those transactions. So if you do lose internet and you're in offline mode, you won't be able to process credit cards. However, what we do is recommend a 4G connection to customers per site, or an alternative internet connection that's paid by the data size. And a lot of your internet service providers should be able to accommodate that for you.
Mm-hmm. We work with, to add to that, we work with a third-party vendor called Orbcom as well. They've been great at providing failovers to our customers. We have customers stretched from the West Coast all the way through the East Coast, Hawaii, you name it. So everybody's got a different need there, but this company is excellent to work with. They'll even let you test the device for free up to 30 days to really identify what your needs are from a connection standpoint. So I encourage, if any of you are in need of that, to please let me or Ariel know. We can set up a call with Orbcom and their representatives. They've been great to work with so far.
Yeah, and their devices, what we do is we work with them to set it up on your firewall. So when you lose internet, it identifies that you've lost internet and automatically fails over to that device. So from the office, you don't have to go out back and figure out if you have internet, if you don't have internet, it automatically fails over back and forth on if your primary, which is your regular internet, has internet or not. So that's a nice feature.
Hi, Nate. We see a couple of your questions here. So, what is the benefit of using remote desktop versus log me in?
So with remote desktop, it's really for point of sale functionality, and back office functionality. But devices are the big culprit with log me in and Counterpoint. So when you're trying to print forms and set up default printers, log me in, the regular log me in doesn't actually redirect those over. So it's difficult to utilize your devices both for point of sale and back office. Now, you are able to use log me in more in the back office if needed. Again, it's probably, I wouldn't recommend it above maybe one remote computer, just because of the resources that are needed to do that. So that's kind of why remote desktop is utilized, is because of those redirection of the local ports and printers.
Great. And his follow-up question is, if they are using RDP to the SQL server located on site for them, does another set of user credentials need to be created for that user on the server?
So as far as remote desktop works, it's a Windows service, it's a Windows feature, and so each account will need a domain user, so you need a domain license, as well as a remote desktop license. It's a Microsoft license. So you will need 2 seats. Now, if you have a local environment, you can use the same Microsoft domain account and then just purchase a remote desktop license. And those are done by device or concurrent users by user. So that's kind of how it's licensed. Now, all data center customers, it's kind of built in. It's already, we license all of those users ourselves. So that's part of the cover a lot of licensing costs. They aren't inexpensive. Let's put it that way.
Great. Nathan, let us know if you have any other questions on that anyway. Oh, Nathan does have another question. So, does RDP require another or use a current CP license, Counterpoint license?
The remote desktop connection does not, but if you're in Counterpoint on the terminal server, it does. So you can get connected to a terminal server and not use Counterpoint, but we back end the Microsoft feature of the remote desktop to connect to a terminal server, and then we launch Counterpoint from the terminal server. So in an example, most of our data center customers, we try to utilize anywhere from 25 to 35 users per terminal server. So it all depends on how many people are in Counterpoint at the same time, as far as Counterpoint concurrent users go.
Great. George, I know you got a couple questions here. So in regards to the fee, the $190 is a one-time fee to add the option to your account. Your Counterpoint subscription service that you pay once a year or quarterly, some people do that, is 12% of the total software cost. So if you're adding offline ticket entry into your options, into the account, your CSS will be prorated. It will go up a little bit because you're adding an additional option. So that's the only other fee associated with that process in regards to the software alone. As a resource, RCS is here to help. Of course, if you need us to install offline ticket onto your stations, we do have documentation for you to do that on your own once you've purchased the license. But if you do need us, the fee for that is a half hour per station at $82.50. If not, we can certainly send the documentation to you for those. You would need to deploy offline on each individual station for that use. And then I know you got another question. So when do I set up the new calendar dates for the new year? I think you can certainly do that now. I think you could even do next year if you wanted to have it ready to go. But now's the time that you'd want to start doing that.
Yep.
And George also has another question. We are having a sales tax change starting on January 1st. Where do I change sales tax? It's a great question.
Taxes will be set up underneath the tax category, so that would be separate from the calendar year. It does, obviously, you need your calendar year set up to use the taxes, but as far as the tax, normally those would be set up under the tax the specific task that you have, that's normally where it is. If you're not seeing it there, definitely give us a call, and we can walk you through all of that specific question.
And Thomas, for the calendar annual update, is there perhaps a SQL script that we can schedule on the server so we don't forget from year to year? We forgot last year. You're not the only one. That happens.
That's why it's in our signature.
That's why we're doing it. Yeah.
It is in our signature. So all this information, this piece is in our signatures of all of our emails from RCS, because it is a common question. A SQL script, I don't 100% know that answer. Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see about getting one, getting that answer for you. And actually, I'll send this. Or Amanda can send it off to everyone that's in this webinar. The question is,
I could add it to the follow-up if we want to look at that and get it out to everybody.
The question is there an automated script that can run or be triggered based on my physical year? Most people's physical year is December, but there's times that they're not, to automatically create that. So great question.
And Rachel, how soon can we get the calendar for the following year set up? You can do that now. So these steps, if you don't see the calendar year as an option as your step one in some of the documentation we reviewed today, step two would be to add that. The steps are in there, but I'll make sure you can certainly set up for next year or the year following to make sure that that's there. Always a safe reminder to review that at year end, which is why we typically like to cover this topic at this time of year. But the steps will be outlined in the documentation I'm going to send you. And of course, if you have any issues or questions or just would feel more comfortable in someone assisting you, we can make sure Ariel or myself will make sure we create a case for someone to help you with that.
Yeah, but it's more easy. It's actually easier and better to do it now. That's why we do this.
Yeah.
I think we start blasting it in our newsletters in October, just to make sure people are prepared, because coming back from a holiday season, coming in on the 2nd or 3rd, depending on, and things aren't working, you got to do your calendar, you're getting errors, is frustrating. So anything that we can do to prepare ahead of time is what we're here for.
Before we close out today, please, anybody feel free to populate some questions in this box for us. We're here. We do have some time, but there is a promo for block time for the end of year. We're actually specially offering to you guys, we're also doing a promo right now. You buy 5 hours of block time, you get a gift card for RCS, or you can get an additional hour of block time. Today, for joining this session, we're offering an additional 10% off any block time contract purchased. So block time doesn't need to be just support related. It can also, we can pull some of that for training as well, things like that. Just can't go towards any hardware purchases, only service related. So just for you guys, you get an additional 10% off. So it's for those of you using block time. I'm not seeing any new questions. So if nobody else has any questions, maybe, just kidding. Yes, George, I will be definitely sending out. Everybody will get a copy of this complete webinar, and you'll get a link that you can play it. It will show the whole presentation as well as all the questions we covered. So it should be prompted to, as soon as this session closes out, it prompts the system to send that to you. So you'll get it through today at the latest tomorrow morning.
I believe there's some questions too about the webinar
Yeah, I think you have a brief survey, a couple questions they ask you to fill out and things like that, but you will get a complete copy of this, and feel free to share it with anyone who needs it.
Part of that survey, actually, I do want to throw something in there. Part of that survey does go over kind of your business decision or business needs that you guys are going to be looking forward to 18 and moving forward. Any interesting topics that you want to see coming up. So if you guys want to just make sure you fill out that survey and put in your interest, that kind of helps us help you guys present, the more focus on what you guys are looking for, as well as off topic. If you're interested in something, we can have one-on-one conversations about those topics. So great survey to have on the end of the webinar.
Great. And, you know, if anybody's interested, we love to train the trainers. So if any of you want some special sessions set up to specifically go over any of the offline or RDP setups or anything like this for your own training purposes internally, we can certainly do setup sessions for that as well. So, great. Well, if no one has any other questions, I'm going to close out today's, oh, just kidding. Just kidding. Johnny, we are not able to reprint receipts until after the drawer session has been reconciled. Is there a way to enable the reprints before the drawer is reconciled?
Yes, that should be a standard function in Counterpoint. What we can do, Johnny, is we'll create a case for that and have someone take a look at that and see what's going on. The reprint ticket should be just a form that's on your touchscreen, actually some buttons as well. So you can easily do that from really any station. You can print the receipts for that specific station and or search all stations in the store to reprint those, if I'm understanding that question correctly. So yes, we'll be able to get that taken care of for you.
Thanks, Johnny.